We're going to begin this morning with the latest on the midterm elections and what broke late last night, that new majority in the House of Representatives.
That's right. NBC News is projecting that Republicans will control the House for the next 2 years after winning enough seats to have a majority in the chamber. The win that put it over the top for the GOP, that came in California's 27th congressional district, where Republican incumbent Mike Garcia defeated Democratic challenger Christy Smith. The GOP's slim majority in the House means divided government will return to Washington, with Democrats controlling the Senate. And this morning, both parties are assessing the fallout from the midterms while looking toward what the next 2 years will bring on Capitol Hill.
We have team coverage for you on all these key developments this morning. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa is here, along with NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray, and our anchor buddy, by the way, on the day post-election. And here we are, still post-election results rolling in. Good to have you both with us. Ali, I will begin with you. We want to talk about what this new round of sort of the split in Congress means for both parties. We know overall it likely means a lot of gridlock. So I want to ask you something specific that maybe we can kind of understand. What could this mean for the future of existing committees, like, for example, the January 6th committee in the House?
Yeah, well, that's just one of the things that we expect to change. When you look at the slim majorities that the Democrats have on the Senate side and Republicans have on the House side, you can see how difficult it's going to be for President Biden and Congress to get anything done these last 2 years of President Biden's first term. A Democratic Senate majority no doubt gives President Biden an advantage when filling key committee assignments, filling judicial appointments, filling a Supreme Court seat if the opportunity arises over the next 2 years. But a Republican majority in the House really is setting up just a stalling of President Biden's agenda. House Republicans have already said, they've been saying for months, that they plan to investigate Hunter Biden, President Biden's son, and his business dealings. They plan to start impeachment proceedings. They've already said that they plan to dissolve the January 6th committee investigating the attack on the Capitol as it stands right now. They've also said that they plan to pass a bill to secure the border within their first few weeks of reaching this majority. So definitely teeing up a very difficult 2 years, but there's already been an olive branch extended. We saw President Biden last night when Republicans reached that 218-seat threshold to reach the majority, congratulate Republicans and say he's willing to work across the aisle to get something done over the next 2 years.
And Mark, I want to bring you in here because notably it took more than a week for the GOP to get this majority in the House after already losing out on the Senate. So what do you think that says in terms of their messaging to voters this cycle, especially after their predictions of a red wave in the midterms?
Yeah, of all the surprises that we ended up seeing from the election, maybe the biggest surprise of all was that it took 8 days to call the House of Representatives in control for Republicans. Mm-hmm. Remember, Republicans only needed to flip a net of 5 seats to win control, one of the lowest bars that we've seen over the last century in covering American politics and midterm elections. And Republicans ended up doing it. But what it really does show you is that red wave that so many people were talking about, and even some Democrats had been fearing, really did fizzle out. And when you ended up taking President Biden's low approval ratings, the 70% of Americans who think the country was headed in the wrong direction, the thought was that that was going to topple Democratic incumbents as well as have Republicans win open seats. But as we ended up seeing, Democrats actually held their own, whether it was their incumbents or some of those open seats. And that's why it took so long to call the race, in addition to those long counts that we've all been following in California and the West Coast.
Let's talk about leadership now. And Ali, now that the GOP has this majority locked up, where things stand with Kevin McCarthy's campaign to become Speaker. Also, what does this mean for Nancy Pelosi's future in the House?
Yeah, so we're expecting to hear from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi later this morning about her future plans. She could either decide to stay in Democratic leadership that she's held for almost 2 decades now, or decide to step down. I know we saw President Biden wish for the latter earlier this week, hoping she would stay in Congress. As far as the House's top Republican, Kevin McCarthy, this is nearly a decade-long road for him to become Speaker, and it still facing roadblocks. We saw him win that nomination earlier this week against House Freedom Caucus member Congressman Andy Biggs, who decided to challenge McCarthy at the last minute. Andy Biggs only getting 31 votes in his caucus, but those 31 votes are votes that Kevin McCarthy is going to need on January 3rd when the final election for the speakership happens. So that we've seen Freedom Caucus members really withhold their support for McCarthy, saying that they're making a list of demands, demanding some concessions by McCarthy to win their support. At the end of the day, the reality is that McCarthy needs those House Freedom Caucus members just as much as they need him to get anything done over the next 2 years, Savannah.
And I'd love to end wide, Mark, because we have a clear picture now on the majorities in both chambers of Congress. So what's your lasting impression from these midterm elections? Do you think these results will serve as a roadmap for both parties in the years to come?
Yeah, my takeaway is just how little actually changed despite the billions of dollars spent and all of the 2 years of campaigning. And what we ended up seeing on the House side is that only 7 incumbents ended up losing re-election, 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans. We saw only 1 incumbent governor go down to defeat. That was Nevada Democrat Steve Sisolak. And not a single incumbent senator ended up losing re-election, although we still need to watch what ended up happening in that Georgia runoff for next month. But you all add all of those things up and you just see how little the political movement really, the political lines barely budge this midterm cycle as now we all head into 2024.
Mark Murray and Ali Rafa, thank you both so much.
Let's turn our attention now to the war in Ukraine and the ongoing fallout from that missile explosion in Poland. Yesterday, NATO, Poland, and the United States all said it was likely the missile that fell in a Polish village and killed 2 people came from Ukraine's air defense system. That assessment is being disputed by Ukraine's President Zelensky, who said he had, quote, no doubt that it was not a Ukrainian missile. It's a claim put to President Biden on his return to the White House from the G20 in Indonesia.
What's your reaction to President Zelensky saying that the missiles that landed in Poland were not Ukrainian?
That's not the evidence.
That's not the evidence. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now to talk about this. Keir, it's good to see you. So President Zelensky is sticking to his claim that this was not a Ukrainian missile, despite what NATO is saying. So what's the latest on the investigation into this explosion? And is Ukraine likely to get access to the site, which it is asking for?
Yeah, it's a little bit awkward, isn't it, for Western leaders, for the White House and for Ukraine. This is a division in opinion, a division in outlook, and it's being made public. And that's not really what Western leaders or Ukraine want, because, of course, what they've tried to do is maintain a united front in respect of Russia. But look, President Zelensky is saying that his officials have told him that this was likely a Russian missile. He says it makes no sense for me not to trust them. I've gone through the war with them. He then says, a little bit cryptically, God forbid some missile debris killed these people and we have to apologize. But first, there needs to be an investigation. Again, it's a little bit awkward because effectively what the president of Ukraine is saying is that the Ukrainians want access to the site in Poland in order to confirm for themselves what the West is saying is true. They're supposed to be united. So it's difficult. And ultimately, there is some frustration, I have to say, among European leaders that Ukraine is taking this stance because they do seem fairly convinced that this was a missile defense system, possibly an S-300 Soviet-made missile defense system used by the Ukrainians. And maybe that's part of the reason for the confusion, because, again, if it was Soviet-made but fired by the Ukrainians, you can see why people may make a misjudgment in the early stages.
Yeah, definitely confusing and complicated. And Keir, I do want to focus on what's happening inside Ukraine, because this morning there are reports of strikes in Odessa and Dnipro, among other places. So what exactly is going on?
Yeah, it's important to remember that this is a continuing wave of airstrikes by the Russians, and that is where President Biden and Western leaders are trying to put the focus, saying, look, what happened in Poland is not Ukraine's fault, even if it was a Ukrainian air defense system. So just, for example, the latest news that 4 have been killed and more than a dozen are wounded from drone and missile strikes around Ukraine. Ukrainian officials saying they shot down 2 cruise missiles and 5 Iranian-made drones. Now, that is an improving rate of success for the Ukrainians, and perhaps that is because they have now been helped a little bit by Western-supplied air defenses. Yeah, look, the picture is of a ongoing Russian offensive in the air over Ukraine, and perhaps, and it's been said already, perhaps what happened in Poland is somewhat inevitable when there's a war taking place right next door.
And you've broken down well what we're seeing on the ground. But on the diplomatic front, it looks like the Black Sea grain deal between Ukraine and Russia has been extended again. That matters because we know the war has impacted the world food supply and grain supply. So what can you tell us about that specifically?
Yeah, extended for another 120 days after the deal was in its fourth month. You know, this is a grain deal, a fertilizer deal, foodstuffs deal. It was days away from expiring. And what it means is that these essential foodstuffs can be exported through the Black Sea, which is, of course, part of the war zone, if you like, between Russia and Ukraine. It can be exported through there to places that are so important, like, for example, East Africa, where I was just a few weeks ago, where there is this expanding food crisis. The implications of having that blockade in the Black Sea reinstated would have been crippling, and it would have happened because, despite the fact that the Russians perhaps might not have fired on ships, the insurers who insure those ships can sail would likely have said, well, we're not going to insure them if there's a risk of a continuing conflict in that zone. So very, very important, a breakthrough. The West, the UN, Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, all involved in extending that.
Important analysis. Keir Simmons, thank you.
Let's get more on the war in Ukraine with Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He's a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, of course, want to start with that explosion in Poland and now specifically this tension that we're seeing between Ukraine and NATO over the origins of that mission. Now, there's this investigation that's ongoing, but Ukraine was quick to pin the blame on Russia when it happened. And they're saying they doubt NATO's initial findings anyway, that it was likely Ukrainian, part of their air defense system as it was trying to protect itself from these Russian missiles. What do you make of all this? And are you concerned that incidents like this, as we see, just how easily this can spill over into a bordering country, put the U.S. at risk of getting dragged into this conflict in a more boots on the ground type of way?
You hit it, the nail right on the head. Those are exactly the things that I'm concerned about. And when you look at the actually where that missile landed, you look at where Russia sent its caliber missiles that it attacked that day, it actually makes a lot of sense that a Ukrainian anti-aircraft missile missed its target and then landed in Poland. So, I don't know why the president of Ukraine is going to such lengths to contradict, the president of the United States and all of the Western European leaders, because it's an act or it's an accident that happens in war, and it's just unfortunate. But I think they should move on from it. But the bigger issue that you point out, too, is this exposes just the risk that anything could happen. An accident, a miscalculation, a mistake could draw the United States in. Because imagine if instead of hitting a farm, this had hit some of the U.S. troops in Poland or some of the other Western NATO allies. You can understand that we'd be having a very different conversation this morning if that had happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I want to kind of talk about where this could go from here and what you anticipated. I know you actually wrote a piece outlining something kind of similar to this. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, though, I want to play some sound from General Mark Milley speaking about Ukraine's chances of a military, specifically, victory in this war. First, let's listen to that.
The probability of a Ukrainian military victory, defined as kicking the Russians out of all of Ukraine, to include what they define or what they claim as Crimea, the probability of that happening anytime soon is not high, militarily. Politically, there may be a political solution where politically the Russians withdraw. That's possible.
So as we heard there, General Milley doesn't think there's this high probability of Ukraine, winning militarily, though a political solution might be possible. Do you agree with that? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, that actually, in this 1945 piece that you're referring to, I actually point that out, that there's not a military solution that even is on the cards that Ukraine could drive Russia out, because the capacity is just not there. At the same time that Russia has just mobilized hundreds of thousands of more troops that are on the way in there. So Milley is completely right. There is no military path for Ukraine to win the war as defined by kicking the Russians out. So that leaves the only alternative, the most rational alternative, is a diplomatic solution. The big problem comes in that right now that Zelensky doesn't want to have a negotiation because that would mean he would have to cede some territory. Russia right now doesn't want negotiations because they think this winter offensive is going to win them even more territory. And so right now, until that plays out, I don't think there's even any possibility of a negotiated settlement, though I think that's what should happen to save Ukrainian people.
Very quickly, before I let you go, walk us through the rest of these objectives that you sort of wrote here for Russia's winter offensive.
Yeah, they have. There's a couple of several different options where they could have what's called like a low risk opportunity, where they just try to bring these troops in, these new troops, and defend what they currently have. There's a medium risk where they'll try to maybe complete capture of the Donbass, and then in some of the other areas maybe retake Kherson and then hold there. The problem with each of those is that leaves Ukraine in a position to launch another offensive later on. So I think, as I'll talk about later, that the biggest risk is a large-scale offensive by the Russians to completely devastate most of eastern Ukraine.
Lieutenant Colonel Davis, thank you so much for your time this morning. Important conversation.
And now back to the U.S. A new investigation by the Senate Homeland Security Committee is blasting the FBI, DHS, and leading social media companies. In the 128-page report obtained by NBC News, the committee accused the agencies of not doing enough to tackle the growing threat of domestic terrorism, especially white supremacist and anti-government extremists. For more, we're joined by NBC News justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Dateline. Ken, good morning. So simply, can you just tell us more about this report? What do we need to know?
Good morning, Zingle. Well, the first thing to know is this is the Democratic Senate majority of the Homeland Security Committee criticizing agencies led by the Biden administration. So it's worth paying attention to that. But this is not about politics. It's about bureaucratic inertia. As far as this committee is concerned, they have looked at the responses from the FBI and DHS to this growing threat of domestic terrorism. And what they found is that those agencies are still stuck in the past, still spending more money on the threat from international terrorism, even though officials come before Congress year after year and say the real threat is domestic violent extremists, particularly white supremacists and anti-government extremists. And this report also says that neither the FBI nor DHS can give anybody a good picture of what the actual terrorist threat is out there. And before the January 6th riots, arrests by the FBI in domestic terrorism cases had actually gone down. Now, obviously, they've spiked because the January 6th riots was a huge case. And on the social media company side, the committee says that essentially these major platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, their business models are based around an idea that promotes extremism, because engagement often requires people to be angry and emotional, and that means that they engage more with extreme content.
I've heard the term hate shares, right? That emotional sharing online. I wonder, how are the FBI, DHS looking at social media giants like Meta and Twitter, and how are they responding to these accusations?
The FBI and DHS both responded essentially saying we're doing a pretty good job on domestic terrorism without really addressing the systemic issues raised in the report. Most of the social media companies also responded by saying that they try to take extremist content down whenever they see it, content that violates their terms of service. But what the report said is what they need to do is a better job on the front end with their algorithms that drive people to the extremist content. And that's a bigger issue because essentially that goes at the business model of these social media companies.
And Ken, you talked about the algorithms. What other changes does the Senate Homeland Security Committee want to address the threat of domestic extremists?
This report calls for a fundamental rethink of the domestic terrorism issue in the U.S. government. They want, for example, the DHS to appoint a domestic terrorism coordinator. They want unified definitions because there aren't any across FBI and DHS. On the social media side, they want Congress to impose more accountability on these companies to require them to steer people away from extremist content. But that gets into First Amendment issues, as you guys know, and it's very complicated, and there's not a sort of unified will for what to do in terms of how to regulate these social media platforms.
Time will tell if we get that will. Ken Dateline, thank you.
Now, this morning, we're tracking a historic lake effect snow event expected to be measured in feet. So let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
That's right. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. And it's going to be a lot of feet. You could see 4 feet of snow, maybe 5 feet of snow in some spots. Certainly going to be historical. It's going to rival the storm from 2014 where we saw 65 inches. And take a look at this. This is video out of central Michigan, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, where western Michigan was playing their rival central Michigan in a blizzard, whiteout conditions. But I love it so much because you could tell they're having so much fun. And if you watch this video, we have longer videos where the people in the stands are building snowmen, the cheerleaders, look at them. They're just having so much fun. That first snowfall of the year. And we're going to be seeing a lot of snow around the Great Lakes and more snow falling in central and western Michigan. This is what it looks like on radar right now. You can see the blue, and we're looking at some heavy snow falling. That's where you're seeing the lighter blue, almost the white color. And that's downwind of Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. That's going to continue today. It's going to pick up today, tomorrow also. It's going to continue into the weekend. We could see heavy snow, too, in western Michigan. So this is what it looks like along the Great Lakes. Again, heavy snow. Where these bands set up, that's where we're going to see the heaviest snow. Visibilities will be reduced down to 0 in some spots. It's going to make travel very difficult. The National Weather Service out of Buffalo is calling it a paralyzing event. It's going to be prolonged, too. So it's the cold winds moving across those warmer lakes, and that's where we're seeing that lake effect snow machine being triggered. And then we're going to see the snow continuing tomorrow, piling up on the east side of the lake. Strong winds, difficult travel, and poor visibility. It's going to affect the roadways. It's going to affect the airways as well. Winter alerts posted for Wisconsin, to Michigan, along the Great Lakes, including Watertown, Buffalo, Erie, and even portions of northeastern Ohio could see a lot of snow, as well as northwestern Pennsylvania. This is what it looks like in terms of your snowfall forecast. Where you see those brighter colors, the pinks, the purples, that's where we're expecting the heaviest snow. So portions of western Michigan, the UP of Michigan as well, and also downwind of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And again, 4 feet is possible, 5 feet are even possible. We're going to see 2 inches per hour for 24 to 36, even more for several days. We're going to see a lot of snow. We could see some thunder snow as well. That's going to add to some of the energy as well. So we're looking at impacts in the air. Buffalo probably seeing ground stops and delays, very likely, major delays, and moderate delays in Pittsburgh, Detroit, Milwaukee, and also Chicago. So we have the snow. We also have really cold air coast to coast. Once again, the coldest air of the season today. So freeze alerts from the Carolinas to the southeast along the Gulf Coast as well. Lows near or below 32 degrees. It's cold this morning, and look at tomorrow morning. People waking up to temperatures below 0. It's going to feel like 16 below 0 in Bismarck. It'll feel like 1 degree in Minneapolis, and it's going to feel like 8 degrees tomorrow morning in Chicago. Those morning lows are going to continue into next week, so we're not going to get a break very soon. Notice Pittsburgh in the 20s, even in the teens on Sunday. This single digits in Bismarck, 8 degrees as a low Monday morning. And we're going to keep those highs really chilly too, guys. We're going to look at temperatures anywhere from 10, 15 up to 30 degrees below normal for this time of year. So it's cold and it's snowy.
Michelle, here in New York at like 4:45 this morning when I took my dog out, there were a few little snowflakes, just like it wasn't anything heavy. But yeah, and I was like getting up close to it. Obviously, I can't see. I was like, just woke up. It's dark. But I was like, is that snow? It was crazy.
I can attest. I was just in the Great Lakes region.
I think it gets pushed from the Great Lakes. So it's the wind just bringing it down. Isn't that so cool?
Yeah,
it travels that far.
Just a little bit. I was into it. You know how I'm feeling. I'm all ready for this festive weather. All right, Michelle, thank you.
I know, it's fun. Thanks.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.